Well, welcome everybody. Um, we have two people from Iowa today, Pat Rynard and Liz Fleming. They're going to be talking about how to get the progressive news information out online. So they'll be talking with us in a few minutes. Jim will do his usual PowerPoint and bring us up to date on what's happening. And a little bit later in the program, we are going to talk a little bit more about the No Kings rally and open it up to people's comments. But I just wanted to start with something from Heather Cox Richardson this week. For those of you who don't get her Substack, you really should. Letters from an American. One of my favorite signs that I actually saw online, I didn't see it live in Washington, D.C., but one of the favorite signs online that I saw from somewhere was, "I will stop resisting when Heather Cox Richardson says it's all okay." And that's pretty much what I feel like. She is a political historian, and she writes about what's happening now, but also relevant things that have happened in history. And what she was writing about the day before the No Kings rally was just something that really hit home, and you'll see why. She wrote about the burning of a town in Maine in 1775. It's called Falmouth. It's not what is today Falmouth, Maine, and it's not Falmouth, Massachusetts today, but back then it was called Falmouth, and it was in Maine. So in 1775, you know what was happening in general, but she was writing about a period when the British military was getting really fed up with the colonists who were doing all sorts of annoying things, boycotting British goods, raiding British ships along the New England coast. And in October of 1775, Vice Admiral Samuel Graves, the head of the British North Atlantic Fleet, decided he would regain control of coastal citizens by terrorizing them. Sound familiar? Captain Moat, who was captain of a military unit, got orders from Admiral Graves to set fire on all of the seaport towns between Boston and Halifax, and then to quote unquote burn New York to ashes. On October 7th, the British ships off the coast of Falmouth opened fire on Falmouth. And when the lack of wind kept fires contained, Moat sent sailors ashore to spread the fires. Colonists saw the burning of Falmouth as proof that their government had turned against them. I'm sure that sounds familiar too. William Whipple, a resident of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, wrote at that time that the ruin of the town by the British, quote, caused everyone to risk his all in support of his liberties and privileges. The cruelties of the enemy have so effectively unified us. I believe there are not 4 persons now who do not oppose the tyranny of Great Britain. So that struck me because yesterday when I was driving to the metro to take the metro downtown in Washington to the rally, I got so choked up because all along the route, this was early in the morning, it was way before the rally started, all along the route, there were groups of senior citizens outside senior resident buildings along Connecticut Avenue. There were these groups of people out on Connecticut Avenue in wheelchairs and walkers and with signs. And everybody was honking. Everybody down Connecticut Avenue was honking. And it just was so emotional, even before I got to the rally. And the rally itself was fantastic. Saw many of you there. So it does feel like the more terrified people become, the more unified we become. And I think we have to use that energy to get even more organized than we already are. So we'll turn it over at this point to Jim.
Yeah, great. Let's use that energy. I will confess, I decided to do canvassing instead yesterday because I felt my skill set was adapted to that. I could have gotten out. Maybe I don't have a wheelchair, but I decided to do that instead, and so did some other people on the call, I noticed. Great. So I'll, as usual, go ahead and share my screen. So what I'm going to be talking about we're going to talk about Iowa mainly and one specific great thing for Iowa, but as part of a broader strategy. And this site, I've shown this slide before from, sports that it's in the off season that you win your games through a variety of reasons. So that's what we're trying to do. And what I'm going to try to describe pretty well is what I'm now calling the 31st Street three-state, three-pillar infrastructure strategy. So it's like 3x3 kind of a strategy, not that we'll do all of it. So starting with the states, you've seen this slide before, and I'm going to make the case for why I think it should be Alaska, Nebraska, and Iowa. It's about the U.S. Senate because that's sort of the starting point, but there's so much more in these states that you'll see. Okay, so then what is the three pillars? Now up to now we've tended to call it the three-legged stool. I sort of decided pillars was kind of more, there was more to it. So anyway, we can still call it both. So what are they? They're the nonprofits, C3 and C4, Democratic parties, and blue social media. All of this is to strengthen us. All these entities, they enter into kind of like starvation mode. I mean, blue media to some extent hasn't really evolved that much, but after elections, they're in this sort of famine sort of mode, and there's a lot of value to be supporting them when you can find, especially good opportunities, which is what I spend a lot of my time doing. Okay, then why Iowa, Alaska, and Nebraska for infrastructure? Okay, we have the U.S. Senate and multiple other races, 2 governor races, 5 competitive House races, lots of legislature races, etc. They've also been hurt a lot specifically by MAGA policies. Now, we don't exactly know how that's going to affect voting. Nationally, the average is there's this guy, Elliot Morris, that does this averaging. They're down by 13% nationally, and that includes a fair number of these Republican polls that kind of tilt. The Economist put out a map where they sort of estimated Trump's disapproval in every state. And in these 3 states, also, he's underwater according to that analysis. Again, we don't know what but these are states that Trump won big, and he's underwater in those states. We have recent electoral wins in all 3 of them. I'll come back to them. Again, in terms of opportunities, we look for organizations of one type or another where we think some money will make a difference, and we'll come back to that. Also, it's because everybody else is focusing on California, North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. And that's good. It's good that they are. But there's not that much focus on these states that they deserve. And then lastly, we have to be realistic about what's going to happen after 2026, especially 2030, which I'll show you in terms of the electoral map. All right, just to review in terms of the U.S. Senate, we have 42. They're not all Democrats, but they might as well be. I think I definitely, chances are excellent in North Carolina. Roy Cooper raised $45 million already. I actually think, notwithstanding the issues in Maine, I still think that they're very good. The other 2 are iffy. We need more. We need more shots on goal. Okay, you get that? I don't know if that's soccer or hockey or what. Shots on goal. We need more of those. And so that's the idea here. Even if we just improve, however many we get, every one is going to be helpful to us. Then rural America has been hit very hard a number of ways, especially Medicaid and closing rural hospitals, tariffs, and so forth. I won't go into that. You know that, but just to make that point. All right, now here's this point about, the electoral map that we have to take seriously. This is something called American Redistricting Project. They took the population growth and extrapolated to 2030, if you look at this, Texas is going to get 4 more House seats, Florida 4 more, California lose 3, New York lose 2, and then we'll lose more other ones. So we have no choice. We have to start doing better and reaching out into some of these purplish to red states where I think, and now's our opportunity. Trump has made so many electoral mistakes in terms of popularity that this is our opportunity. Okay. Just to go through some, again, this is a little bit of real data. So in Alaska, I guess it was last year, we won the Anchorage mayoral race. That was partly because of Project 907, by the way. And then just recently in Fairbanks, so half the population in Alaska lives in Anchorage, So and of course, it's an off-year election and so forth. We know that. Nebraska, we won mayoral races in Omaha and Lincoln. And that's new for us in Nebraska. And I'm told half the population of Nebraska is in Omaha and the Lincoln areas. All right, so it's not all just cornfields in these places, right? Okay, Omaha is a huge city, and of course a congressional district there. And then in Iowa, these great state senate victories. Again, special elections, the one we helped with, Caitlin Dray, and also a guy named Mike Zimmer. These are races were districts where Trump really swept them, and yet we still won them. Okay, so just trying to help make that case. But now shifting specifically to Iowa. Oh, this is from, I know this is not Iowa. I don't exactly know where it came from, but there were a lot of there. I saw some Iowa things from No Kings yesterday, and this one struck
Looks like Iowa.
because where is it?
That looks like the Iowa State House back there, don't you think, Liz? Well, anyway.
Okay, well, I like the poster because it's the theme that we're talking about. All right, so what we're here about to talk today is about what we're now calling the Iowa Creator Core, which is in a way more of a community than a core. And you may know I've been working on this for months to try to find something good for us to do in the blue media area to support creators and influencers. And we have struck up this partnership with Project Bullhorn. And the advantages of working with them, first of all, they're going to pay for some of it, but also they have expertise and experience and ways of working with this kind of modality that I think is going to help us. And they have a number of other similar, but not all that similar kind of projects around the country that they're funding. So of course it is about social media and policies and the truth. And I just want to make the clear point. This is not about political campaigns, what these folks are doing. This is C3 funded. What they're doing is addressing policies and the truth and so forth. And that's what allows it to be C3 funded, but that also makes it easier for us to get funding. And of course, we'll meet our great Iowa team leadership in just a couple of minutes. Now, our goal, our part of this is $200,000 of C3 funding, which is for a pilot and like a startup phase. If it works well, we'll keep, promoting it and building it and so forth. And also, I think one of the advantages of working with Bullhorn is, and us, we would try to replicate it in other states. Now, the good news is that we've been told that a family foundation is actually going to fund up half of this, $100,000 of C3 funding. Supposedly it's in process and going to be on its way. That means the rest of us only have to do the other 100,000, but that's still going to be something that we need to do. And we will put the donation link in the chat. Hopefully we'll get some donations from you folks as well. Just to remind, I just have this picture that I forget where I got it of a bunch of influencers, just to give you this, idea face to face of what some of these folks are. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Patrick, and he can tell us what they're planning, and I'll stop sharing.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Pat Rynard, and Liz Fleming is here with us, obviously, as well, coming to you from the great state of Iowa on a really nice fall day. It's pretty beautiful out.
Perfect weather outside.
It is. Um, but first, I just want to thank y'all for having us and to reaching out to us for this project. This is what Liz and I really love to do. So we are super excited to kind of dig in, to strategize, and then to start, start recruiting a bunch of social media creators and influencers and get rolling with them here in Iowa. We've done stuff like this before. We've had success, and I just very much appreciate when organizations like this one reach out and try to help us do something, different and creative, because it can really help a lot. So let's talk about the yet to be fully named Iowa social media creator program. And I should also mention at the outset, so Liz and I aren't actually going to start working. Our first days isn't for until 2 weeks from now. So like this is going to be like a broad overview, like concept thing, but it isn't going to have like super in-depth like numbers and data and all that just yet. But we'll be able to give you a pretty good sense of what all we're looking to do. But the big picture idea is to build a importantly strategic network of local social media creators to produce more and better political content on Iowa social media with the hopes of it getting in front of a lot more Iowans in the hopes of better changing how people are getting their news, how they're thinking about politics in their state, and influencing them in a broad sense to, hopefully make better electoral outcomes and just a better, more progressive state in general. Let's see. So first, it's nice. I don't. I launched Iowa Starting Line about 11 years back here in this state. I'm not with Courier at the moment. I was on sabbatical for most of this year. But when I started it, I really had to explain to a lot of people like the whole focus of like an independent, progressive news outlet and how we work with social media. I feel like I don't have to do that as much anymore. I feel like everybody like fully gets like the importance of social media and how people are getting their news. But just kind of like a broad overview. How Iowans get their news has changed dramatically in the past 2 decades, and it not so coincidentally, has also lined up with how the state has gotten a lot more red in the last decade after being a pretty reliably purple state. I found one survey as I was looking this up that actually had Iowans second in the country for the percentage of people who use social media, which actually is like when you get out there, even though it's an older state, like everybody's on Facebook. It's how they're getting information about their local community. And there is a surprisingly large amount of folks who are also on Instagram and TikTok. It's most definitely not just for Gen Z, millennial type folks. And I also see a lot of older Iowans as well, even making videos and TikToks as well. Meanwhile, at the same time, Iowa newspaper print circulation has just like collapsed. In general, Iowans are not getting their news from traditional mainstream media anymore, but they are still getting information that is shaping their politics from their social feeds. Liz, do you want to talk a little bit of how folks your age, our age?
Absolutely. I started creating some video content, posting it on TikTok back in the pandemic. So 2020, 2021. And I realized that there was a gap, especially in my age group and kind of the surrounding age groups, of getting information about what's happening politically in our state. As Pat alluded to, a lot of the local newspapers are either shut down or they've gone to maybe 3 days a week for publications. And that was traditionally where people got the bulk of their information. Online, I am an online subscriber to the Des Moines Register and my hometown Telegraph Herald. And that was really where I was getting most of my information. But a lot of my peers were not, because they either didn't get a print edition, they didn't subscribe to it, or the information was behind a paywall. So what I started doing was recapping what these news articles were saying that I was reading online for folks, or watching the news, the local news stations or the national news stations, and just direct to camera explaining to people what was going on. And what I found was a lot of people appreciated seeing Iowa represented online, where they already were getting their dose of pop culture or whatever they're looking for online. Being present and being already there for them when they open their phone screen to give them this information was highly beneficial to them. Uh, with things like geotagging. So marking that I posted this in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or Des Moines, Iowa. Things like that really informed the algorithm to push this information and the video of me talking to people in that area. And largely what I was seeing was Iowa was an unsaturated market where there was really nobody else doing this. And thankfully, I started working with the Iowa Starting Line and Pat, and there was a more robust infrastructure there for me receiving information, breaking it down for people in digestible and human terms for people to understand. And then it was also shareable for them. So when you see a video that you appreciate or that you like, people were sharing those to their peers or other people in Iowa. And I'm very thankful that I went out on a whim and started posting about that stuff, because it has equated to hundreds of thousands of people following me online, waiting to see what is happening in Iowa. What has Liz said about this? Who are the other creators that we can follow? And thankfully, there have been other content creators or influencers that are touching on topics in Iowa. So long story short, things have changed as far as where people are getting their information, and social media and influencers and content creators are really filling those gaps of the representation of what's going on in Iowa for the people. And there are people all the time messaging me, what's going on in this place? Or can you talk about what's going on in Sioux City, Iowa? Or what's going on in Burlington? And again, it just kind of shows that people want more. People want more information. They want to make informed decisions at the ballot box. They want to make informed decisions for their community. And they really trust the people who live in those communities and are active members of those communities, telling them human to human what's going on. So it's been a beautiful journey for me as a content creator, and there are more people who want to do the same thing. They just might not know how to start.
What we're seeing is that you're getting a lot of trusted local people, people who look like you, who are in your town. That's where people are going to. On the campaign, just briefly here, I want to mention on the campaign and candidate side of things, we've got something interesting going on here. 4 or 5 years ago, when Iowa Starting Line made this shift to social first and just doing a lot more social media type reporting, I just kind of like called a meeting of all of the top Democratic elected officials and all the campaign folks and sat them down in a room in Des Moines and showed them up on the wall. Like, I added up all the Facebook impressions of the different Democratic candidates and Republican candidates, and Republicans were out everythinging them to 10 to 1 in the state. It's changed now, and it offers to have a thing like this offers a good chance to take advantage of something. We have Rob Sand, who's going to be the Democratic gubernatorial nominee, who is spectacular on social media. He's getting 2.5 million Facebook views per week. And the Republicans who used to dominate social media in Iowa, like Kim Reynolds and Joni Ernst, are both retiring. So we've already seen just like really social first candidates have been able to build up a very loyal following in the state. Rob is getting hundreds of people out at events in small towns, crowd sizes that we haven't seen since presidential candidates. But overall, the local state-based creator market, it's there. There are some. Liz is great. JT, this Iowa investigator guy, really blew up this year. There's just not enough of them, and there's not enough content on a daily basis getting put out. There are some outlets like Starting Line. The Iowa Standard is a right-wing version that's on Facebook all the time. I'd say, Liz, what would you say? Like, there's about maybe a dozen, maybe a few more, like pretty progressive social media creators that pretty reliably post political content
Exactly that.
that would
So,
have a
like you said,
following, I guess.
the Iowa Standard is like the right-wing version of the Iowa starting line, but they are strictly just Facebook. Whereas progressive content creators are staking a very heavy presence on things like TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook, even. They're popping up in a way that there are no right-wing political content creators in Iowa doing this. They do not have the presence that the progressives do. And I don't think they have this on their radar necessarily. And again, it's essentially an untapped market, and there's a need for it. People are either going to get their information from national news sources like Fox or national content creators, or they can get their information from trusted progressive content creators that are actually in their state that they will be able to identify more with. Uh, I would say yes, there are about a dozen progressive creators who are posting at least a couple times a week. There could be more. I think the more information that's out there, the more content that's out there, the more chances there are to interact with it and engage other Iowans with it.
Yeah. And while that's like the local creators thing, the right still like has a far bigger impact online in Iowa, but that's just because they so dominate all the national kind of channels and stuff that filters down in here. The one of the biggest problems for progressives and Democrats in the state of Iowa is that everything that they're getting in their feeds is so nationalized, which is so hyper polarized, and it is not helpful for the brand of Democrats on the state level and that type of thing. And we've seen um, when you make localized political content, it performs great. And the algorithm does a spectacular job of, I've been blown away a number of different times. This one that I have up here, this was relatively early on when ISL was pivoting towards more TikToks and social first stuff. And we had Liz do this quick video about something that was happening in Oline, Iowa, which is a town of about 5,000 people up in northeast Iowa. And when I looked in the comments, we at the time, I think we had, I don't know, not even 5,000 followers yet. It was still very early on. I can't imagine we had more than one or two followers from Oline itself. But because we were talking about their small town, in the comments section, we got all these people who are either from there or who just live down the road. And it was a fascinating example of just how well the geolocating of TikTok, of Instagram, of Facebook can be for this. So that if you make more localized content, it will, whether they're followers of you already or not, it will find a way to deliver it to them in their feeds. And that's particularly important, especially in Iowa, where we want to progressives really need to do better in rural areas and start to bring people back there. And so this is a great way that the more localized, the small town kind of content that you get out there, it will get in front of those folks. I'll also note, just in terms of like you need more of it, uh, the surveys, the stuff are kind of all over the place, but on average, most TikTok users spend about an hour these days on the app, where a lot of them in an hour you can easily scroll through 200 videos a day. So like we've got some progressive creators in the state, but like 4 or 5 or 6 good videos a day just isn't enough to then constantly be keep popping up in their feeds enough so that you kind of inoculate folks from the more nationalized, hyper polarized stuff. What's next? Oh, these are here. I want to include a bunch of these. These are just like some stats from Liz's own personal um, personal account. If you want to talk through, I think one of the most important things here is that sometimes people ask, well, you made something like an interesting progressive content, it just blow up nationally. And what we have consistently found in the back end of our data is that no, it's largely staying in Iowa. Now it's still in some cases with ISL is like still like 40% seeping out, but it's still pretty good. Anyway, sorry, Liz.
Yes. Oh, I was just going to say exactly what you just echoed. Thankfully, in this day and age, the analytics on the back end of applications like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they are pretty granular when it comes to who is watching what and where the heck are they from. So you can see the top cities there. They are largely Des Moines in the metro area, but we are getting out to Ames, Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Iowa. We're getting all around the state with information that people are wanting to see and they're engaging with. I have a couple examples here. Bottom right, we have the No Kings protest that took place this past weekend across Iowa. I made this post, put it out there probably 3 weeks ago. 107,000 people saw it. That's a big number, especially for a state like Iowa. And I think the turnouts that we're seeing in the news, again, my town of Dubuque had over 3,000. The state capital in Des Moines had over 10,000. People saw this and they're asking to do something in real life about what's happening in our state and our country, and they're showing up in real life too. So the numbers are great online. It's great when you have something like the effects of it in person. Right above that, on top right, we have Caitlin Dray, who we mentioned won that special election in August. I made the trek to Sioux City, which is, I had never been there before. The state seemed pretty big on that drive. And I went there and I met with Caitlin Dray and we made a couple of videos together. A good amount of people saw that. We're looking at about 12,000 people. That was shared quite a bit. And people saw posts like that and were interested in learning more about Caitlin. Caitlin had a really wonderful success in August, and I don't think it's not because people weren't paying attention online. There's the in-person component, but people first heard of her and were able to contribute to her campaign statewide because they saw her online.
Very good. And wait, is this where? Oops, hang on. Let's skip to the end there. Okay, all right. And so with all that in mind, the idea here, and again, Jason has a larger big like sheet of all the details, and we'll be filling in more. But the overarching idea here is to build up a creators network of local social media creators, and to build a scalable model, scalable in that we're not paying people thousands of dollars per video, which is what some other creator programs do. I really don't think that is even necessary in Iowa, because I think most of the people who are going to want to do this is just doing it for fun. Some of the other creator programs, sorry, I don't mean to, I know we don't have a lot of time. I don't want to diverge too much, but a bunch of other creator programs out there nationally, everybody's trying to do this, right? On the left now, like they go and find people who are already big out there. They pay them a bunch of money to put to do a video on some kind of progressive issue, but it might not always like naturally fit into their feed of what they're talking about. So this is more helping find folks who are already starting to do stuff. Maybe they have 1,000, 2,000 followers, and that like you can tell that they got the spirit, but they don't have all the technical skills to really level up. So it's finding those folks, recruiting them into a program, giving them resources, and at the end of the day, creating just more content overall to fill people's feeds on a daily basis, and making sure that it is more on message than what is sometimes the case. So a couple things here that we'll want to do. One, provide resources and training to local creators. After we identify these folks, we'll have weekly Zoom calls and trainings and check-ins with folks to make sure everything's going well. Basically, if you're in the program, we don't have all these details yet, but like we'll want people to make like at least 2, but probably more on message pieces of content a week. We'll give them access. We'll provide them access to professional tools, just like the pro version of Canva or something like that, or Equipment Studio Workplace. Liz, do you want to mention some of the challenges you've had with finding a podcast studio for you and your friend's podcast?
Absolutely. So pictured here is my lovely friend, Sarah Bowes. She is a New York City transplant living in Iowa and started creating content exactly about that, what it's like to live in Iowa and see all the quirky things that she's learning. But we started a podcast together called Iowa We Can Do Better, and we needed a space for it. Thankfully, there is a really excellent studio in Des Moines called Amplified DSM, where you can rent studio space for an hour, pay a fee, get in there. You have crisp quality production taking place. You've got great images, videos, and audio. So we are able to put our podcast out there for our listeners, followers, and then post those videos also online on our social media pages. So we're kind of hitting it on all fronts. So if you don't find us on our podcast, on whatever streaming service you got, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and we kind of just hit it all at all ends there. But finding space is very important, and putting a quality product out there with the imagery and the audio where you need it to be for people to tune in and pay attention and really see your work as something of quality and benefit to them. We need more access to things like that to produce those things.
And then Liz will be doing a lot of like the feedback and coaching type of stuff, because again, we've got folks who care about this stuff, but there's so many little teeny tiny little technical things about what makes a good TikTok video or a good graphic on Facebook or a good Instagram post. Liz, you just want to mention real quick, like just an intro, the 3-second hook and like the millennial pause kind of stuff.
Absolutely. There are some tips and tricks that I have learned through my content creation, and you really do get a better response when you know how to best present yourself within the first few seconds of your post. So if I'm creating a video, the first 3 seconds are pivotal for people to engage. So giving people tips like, okay, make sure that your lighting is this way, and make sure that you're facing the camera and that the proportions are just right, and that you have an engaging hook in the first few seconds of what you're saying. That makes a difference, because unfortunately, I know I was joking about this the other day, scrolling through social media has become America's pastime, and people will just keep scrolling if they're not interested. So if I'm able to coach people on how to get people's attention and get their engagement, that's going to benefit everybody here.
Exactly.
Great.
We'll do a couple of person.
I just wanted to quickly let you know, we do have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. Hi, I'm Aaron Hamburger. I do the Q&A. So just, think about wrapping up, and then we'd love
I'll
to.
go faster. Real quick, access to candidates. Everybody knows Liz and I, they trust us. We'll be able to get them in front of folks. Real important thing, part of this is on message. Progressive content. One of the biggest, I could talk about this for hours, is like so many folks are just reactive. They're just reacting to stuff, whereas like we need to have them be more proactive. So we want to give them a couple message themes. So whatever pops up that day, they can pivot it back to that, and so that we can keep building on a specific kind of theme and that type of stuff. Regular news issue briefs. We'll get guest speakers on key topics. We'll have like an editor or something, like get clips of all the TV clips on the day, that then people can do it real easily. Couple of the themes that would be useful up there. And then just, real quick. We've done this before, Liz and I. I could go through all the numbers and stuff, but like we did a pivot at Iowa Starting Line about 5 years ago to social first reporting, where if you do a story, then you make it into a TikTok and a graphic and other things, so that however someone gets their news, our stuff would pop up in them. It was massive success, huge increase in impressions, et cetera, et cetera. And so like I guess my point is like Liz and I, like we're very experienced at this, and we're really excited about this. And then just real quick, like Iowa, perfectly suited, I think, for this approach. The state saw a big swing back to blue in the last Trump midterm. It's a smaller state, so like if it was in Pennsylvania, we'd have to recruit hundreds and hundreds of creators to make an impact. You can do it with less here. No one else is really targeting this. That's what I like. I like finding niches to then help change the underlying dynamic of the state politics, as opposed to just plugging into a campaign. And again, this is always on long-term infrastructure. We have a lot of good hopes for the elections in Iowa, but even if it doesn't work out, if things shift back, like we're still going to have dozens of progressive creators giving more and better on-message content that will then build in future elections as well. It's one of the things I've loved doing the Starting Line, is because like even when things don't work out well, and they kind of haven't here in Iowa, like we have still improved individual people's lives. We've had a lot of people who've come to young people said, I got interested in Iowa politics because I saw your stuff, et cetera, et cetera. All right, there. That's the overview.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love what you said about looking for those niches that not everybody is paying attention to and finding, a lane that is not getting as much attention because that's very much the ethos of our group. So we have a bunch of questions that we would love to ask you. We'll try to get to as many as we can, starting with how do influencers approach the challenge of helping viewers decipher what is true and what is fake news? How do you get viewers to trust you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Liz, how
So
about
I can chime in there. So the amount of trust that is built online comes down to authenticity. And I think that really localized feel really adds to the authenticity of what someone is saying. For example, I might not I might not just post about politics. I also post about going to the state fair. I post about going to a cool restaurant that just opened or going back to my hometown. And people really do, when they see me in public, they feel like they know me and they just start chatting to me like we're friends. So I think really just being authentic and getting people impactful and truthful information that we provide the receipts for. For instance, I'll include a link to a story that I've read or that I'm posting about that really builds the trust within the online community. But beyond that, I think the content creators that are already creating content in Iowa kind of have the same thing going. They might not be posting just about politics. They're posting about this new sandwich they tried, which my friend Sarah Bowes actually got like 2 million views on trying a new sandwich at a deli in town. It's things like that that people might not know that they're going to follow somebody who's going to talk about politics. They're following a fellow Iowan that they see themselves in a way.
yeah. And then on the technical side of things, we've got lots of good partnerships with other orgs in the state that do a lot of research stuff so that so we can provide quickly to these folks like the debunker stuff so that they themselves don't have to do all the because these aren't like seasoned journalists, they just know what they see out there.
Right, right. Quick definition. Are the terms influencer and content creator interchangeable, or is there a difference?
I think content creator is a lot more general. If you're creating content to put online, you are technically a content creator. Are you influencing people? I think we all want to. I think the numbers kind of tell the story there. So if people are starting to follow this person, they seem to be very influential. So they are pretty interchangeable. I think influencer is just more specified to if what they're actually putting out there is changing minds or convincing people of the narrative.
That's
I
great.
think more.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think more recently, the traditional, well, it's funny, is it's traditional because it's all new, but view of an influencer is someone who has tens of thousands of followers and who's trying in some manner to monetize their feed. That's not necessarily all influencers and that kind of stuff, but I think, this is an interesting approach in that just getting a small army of folks who all have their own little niches and audiences, it will be an interesting approach.
So you were mentioning in your presentation that the Republicans like Kim Reynolds and Joni Ernst, who used to be very active in social media, are kind of going away, and the new crop are not really picking up the gauntlet. Do you know why that is, that the Democrats are now doing better than the new Republicans?
I mean, it's largely Rob Sand who's the one who's doing better, and he's just that's what happens when you elect a younger person to a statewide office, and he just has a good outgoing personality on it. It's in the weeds, but I actually think the reason why is that there was two or three really good Republican staffers who ran those who ran those accounts who aren't working there anymore on the new folks.
That's good. Good for us. Is there any collaboration with the Chorus Group, whom we've supported in the past?
I don't know. If they were active in Iowa, I'm not aware of it. But if they've got leads or if they've got other stuff, we'll reach out and see what's there. Liz,
Okay.
did they ever reach out to you?
I have no association with Chorus. I know other content creators in other states. My friend Amanda Tees, who's up in Wisconsin, she's Potty Mouth Pollyanna. The closest that I am to Chorus is just knowing her that
Mm,
she participates in it. So no, I think Iowa has a lot of potential that just it hasn't been tapped and people haven't noticed yet.
mm. Another question that came up was how might the change in TikTok ownership affect the algorithm? Do progressives have the same effectiveness? There any way to address that? Is it still too early to know?
I think the a lot of the algorithms keep changing. And Facebook for the 2 years or so before Trump's second election, when like Meta kind of tried to downplay stuff, we saw a huge change in the reach of our Facebook posts, and we weren't even doing anything all that differently after Trump's election when they lifted that. It might. I am a little concerned about that, but I think the best way to deal with that is to just always like just always be doing stuff with it, because we've had changes in the algorithms before, and we've changed up our strategies in how we produce content to better hit it. So uh, it might be a problem, and just like the best way to deal with it is to just always be really nimble and forward thinking. And
Mm. We know about being nimble at 31st Street. That's one of our mottos. Okay, final question. And by the way, one person said, have you made connections with Liz Lenz, a Substack author in Cedar Rapids? But that relates to the question that someone else asked, which is, do Substack posts, podcasts, YouTube, do they have a role in your social media strategy?
I think some of them do. One of the things is like that Liz and I have always been thinking about. Oh, and well, it's like message distribution. How do you get outside of the bubble? And there are certain things, and I think Substack is one of those where it's very bubbly. Like you're talking to like-minded people, and there's not much of a chance for that stuff to get out and beyond to other folks. Podcasts can sometimes be difficult to get off the ground. I think it's so important to have a video component with it, so you can. I mean, I I feel like I follow Travis and Jason Kelsey's podcast, but I don't actually listen to it. I just see the clips pop up on TikTok from it. So some of those, yes, some of them, no. I've got a couple creative ideas, more long term for Facebook. There's a bunch of retired journalists in the state that I want to recruit them to make like city-based, town-based Facebook pages just to report their level. I don't know. Liz, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth it to try a variety of methods here. Facebook neighborhood groups and town groups have become a huge space for people to get even more local with the information they're sharing. I think exactly Substack, that's also content that is shared across other social media pages. Uh, Liz Lenz specifically, she has a really great Substack that she shares quotes and shareable images from on her social media pages. So it kind of it's it's an ecosystem, and it might start in one place on one platform, but it can easily be shared across others. And I'm excited to just kind of dig in and see where that lies. Yes, I know I'll see Liz Lenz on Thursday, actually. We have a fundraiser that we're going to, and she is a friend of mine, and she's a good friend to have. So we love Liz Lenz. Cedar Rapids is a really important area in Iowa. There's a lot of people there, a lot of progressive people, and she's another person that I'm glad that we have in our group.
That's great. All right. Well, we are running short on time, so we're going to pivot to talk about the No Kings experience. But we just want to say thank you very much for coming by. Now we have what we call after chat when our meeting reaches the formal close around 5 o'clock. So if you want to stick around for that, I'm sure more questions. I already saw one pop up in the chat that maybe we can chat about at that point. But I do want to pivot over to our plan to talk about people's experiences at No Kings. And if I am correct, I believe Lynn was going to speak about that, or perhaps Lisa, Mary, anyone who wanted to chime in.
I think it's an open mic, but Lynn, were you going to start us off?
Sure. I did. My husband and I did manage to hook up with our 31st Street group, and it was great. We met on the corner. Everybody was excited. We start walking or marching, depending on how you want to think about it, toward the main event. And on Pennsylvania Avenue, I immediately found it impossible to figure out where the rest of the group was. But we stayed together with a small group of 4 or 6 people. And the remarkable thing is that my daughter, son-in-law, and grandson, who's 2, came to their first protest, and somehow we managed to actually hook up with them. So it was really, I mean, it was joyous. People, we couldn't really hear the speakers very well. The signs are so creative. The people are just, I mean, I probably have 50 pictures of different signs. So if you haven't done it, I'm guessing most people here did, but if you haven't, come to a protest. All the scary stuff didn't happen.
Mhm.
Mayor, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on 2 things. One was the metro was absolutely jammed. And on our particular car, there were these 2 guys that were leading songs. And, you know, it was like, this land is your land, this land is my land. And so, this little light of mine. But they were just, there was so much fun on our metro car that it was really, you know, of course, I was standing. The car was cheek to jowl every step of the way, but every inch of the car. But that was a really nice way to start out. I also wanted to say there were so many families with children. There were kids in strollers, there were kids on their parents' backs, there were kids walking, just lots and lots of kids. And, you know, what does that say about parents in our culture that they want their children to start having this experience of being part of protest? So those are 2 things I wanted to lift up.
Yeah. If anybody else has anything they want to share, just raise your hand or just let us know.
The Leslie and Pat are raising actual hands instead of
Okay.
so Leslie, you want to go first, then Pat?
I was in the Maryland suburbs, and it was absolutely joyous. We were on a street, and so we were protesting and waving our signs for the traffic. And it was so uplifting to see the smiles and the joy and the fist pumps and just the overwhelming happiness that the drivers all had, and the kids hanging out of the cars and the dogs. And we had music, and we had pom poms, and we had, you know, screaming and yelling and dancing. It was just so much fun, and just the reaction from the drivers was what really made a huge difference to me, and the joy that all of us on the street seemed to bring them.
Great. Pat?
Yeah, I also love the age diversity. One of the previous marches that I had gone to, or there were many more older people, and then everyone since then, it's just been wildly diverse by age. But I wondered if anybody else saw what looked like sharpshooters on top of the East Wing, and I was wondering if that was a kind of attempt to intimidate the march. Did people see that? It
Yeah.
looked like sharpshooters.
They were, but I
Yeah.
actually looked into that and found out
Good.
that it's standard for large rallies.
Oh, good.
And I saw
That's
some
good to know.
pictures of other cities, and they also had people on
Uh-huh.
groups. But it wasn't evidently against us. It was like they
Yeah.
do that for large rallies.
I'd like to
Well-
think that it was actually protection in the sense of scanning the crowd for anything that started to be amiss. I hope
Mhm.
you think of it that way, which we would want. If
Well,
I
there
mean,
also
I
there-
totally agree with you that 9 months ago, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind that they weren't there for protection purposes. But it was just I looked up there and I go, oh, it's just a little bit intimidating. But I'm glad it didn't intimidate people from coming. So,
But there was a
Or for
guy on the metro elevator with me who actually worked in the museums, who said that
mhm.
they always have those, a couple of sharpshooters up there on the
Good, good.
for
Good to
events.
know. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right. And
actually, what
one thing just to know in terms of time, it is 5 o'clock, which is like our sort of scheduled end of our meeting. So if people do need to roll off and go about their business, we understand. But we are going to be hanging out for another 15 minutes with after chat, so we can just continue this conversation. And also, there were a couple of questions that came up in the chat. If people want to talk about those, one about Jay Jones in Virginia asking Jim, what does he think about that situation? And another question about Charlie Kirk. But Corey, you had your hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to say quickly, I organized a group of people to come downtown, and I found that there were a number of people who were afraid. They said that they were afraid to come downtown. And I thought, if you're afraid now, just wait until you don't come downtown and you can no longer come downtown. But I didn't actually say that to people. But yes, there were some National Guard I saw at the beginning. But all the police I saw, in fact, there were less police than I think
Yep.
I've seen in other rallies. And they were all very, they didn't do anything that seemed that they were trying to intimidate or anything like that. I did want to mention that there was a huge group from the Kennedy Center, employees from the Kennedy Center that we saw before the march. They were coming out to protest, so that was good. And of course, I also wanted to mention, to Mary's point, that the red line was not working that morning. And so nefarious mind, I thought maybe that Trump had something to do with that, but that was a disaster. But anyway, yeah, there was obviously and clearly no problems. And I would hope that more people would come on the next time downtown, so that there were even more and less fragmentation out in the suburbs.
Yeah, Mary and Lynn, you got your hands up.
I just wanted to read something, the end of the article in this morning's Washington Post about the backfiring of the Republican strategy. Demonization of the rallies only served to boost interest. Ezra Levin, co-founder of Indivisible, told the Post, "I did not pay $1 for this free publicity. It is incredible. They fear mass peaceful protests, and that's true of any authoritarian regime."
Lynn.
So one of our signs, it was a picture of Pete Hegseth, and beneath it said DUI hire. And as we were walking away, there was a group of maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 DC policemen mixed in with a couple of park police. And my husband was just kind of carrying the sign, right? He wasn't holding it up. And at a distance, they saw it, and you could see them like elbowing each other and snickering. And then as we got closer, they all kind of went stone-faced, like, no, we didn't think that was hysterical. So I feel like there's more of them on our side than we necessarily think.
Great. How about let's do Mike and Sandy Barkin, and then Jim, if you can talk about the Jay Jones race and what you've observed from your canvassing, and also just your sense of what's going on there. Mike, you're next.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this morning I was at a synagogue function and spoke to a couple of friends who are federal employees, and they thanked me for going down to the march, but they themselves were afraid to go in case their pictures were taken or word got back to higher ups at their agencies. And I'm retired, I can do don't worry with that, but I just wish there was some way we could get federal workers not to to disabuse them of that mentality. I'm not criticizing them. I understand because, they're employed, I'm retired, but just as an observation that which is a way we could disabuse them of that.
Okay, great. Sandy.
Yeah, I only got on a little bit ago. Sorry, I've missed most of all the good things that you've done and said today. But I did just hear the comment about the red line. I did not know they were closed down earlier when I got on in Cleveland Park at about 11. Everything was functioning except for a few stops in sort of eastern DC. It was working, and most wonderfully, as we got to Metro Center, either it was the conductor, the driver, whoever has access to the loudspeaker came on. At first I thought, oh gee, there's somebody in the car with a loudspeaker. And he said, hey y'all, I know you're going into town to save our country for democracy. I wish you well. I mean, we're all going, and he said, take care, be safe. I want to take you back home safely. Can you believe it? So whatever, just to comment, there were good things on the red line yesterday.
That's so nice.
When Amy and I were heading home, we were on the platform, and we got home okay on the red line. Over the loudspeaker, in between announcements of trains, the person was announcing "Free DC, free," DC. And everybody on the platform was clapping. I mean, it did seem like it was spreading, the whole thing.
That's great. Okay, Jim, and then George has his hand up.
So in my canvassing, which is mostly, turnout canvassing, nobody's raised Jay Jones at all. And we're just canvassing in this one House district, but it's maybe somewhat representative. The deputy campaign manager said that they're out canvassing all the time. And he said only one person had raised it, and that person had said they were still going to be voting for him anyway, and that it was unfortunate. In terms of the overall race in general, there's not much polling coming out now, or actually I haven't really seen anything, and I think that's because early voting started, and when that happens, it seems to suppress actual polling. But what I'm hearing from the analysis of the early voting is that people are finding it reasonably positive.
Great. Good to hear. Okay, George, you wanted to say something. Oh, you're on mute. Can you unmute? There you go.
Aaron, I already basically had my question answered, but I wanted to echo what Mary was saying about the joy in the crowd. And I was impressed too that there wasn't all old folks. There were a lot of young people with kids. I think what Mike said about federal employees being intimidated is accurate. One of my kids is in that ballpark, and there's no way she would go to and I've told her not to, because you could be recognized. I guess if you have friends who are in that predicament, tell them to wear a baseball cap or some kind of a costume. How about a frog costume like all the other people, or something that would slightly obscure their faces? But I hope they still come.
That's great. We had a question in the chat for our guest speakers. Liz and Patrick are still around. This was about what has been the effect of the Charlie Kirk assassination in Iowa and on campuses in the state. Is that something that's having a political effect in Iowa?
I mean, it was such a huge story that I think it had effect here just like it did everywhere. I haven't been by any campuses lately to talk with folks there to kind of see. In general, like this is my take. People might disagree with it. Like I think it was what I saw people posted on Facebook was not helpful for the Democratic brand. I'll just say that.
Hmm.
And yeah.
Liz, any thoughts or?
Yeah, I'm online all the time, so I see the conversations taking place, and there really was this kind of sobering moment when that happened and when that took place. And it kind of went both ways, where people had very intense emotions about it. Across Iowa, there was concentrated effort by the Iowa Standard to dox negative about Charlie Kirk, and it kind of turned into a bigger conversation, more so about free speech and what that really means. So I do think that there's still more conversation to be had there, but everyone's kind of looking for the messaging to come from the top of the Democratic Party. Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's one clear kind of talking point that people feel comfortable turning to where they feel like they're on message and also like being sensitive about what happened. There were some campuses that held vigils, candlelight vigils for Charlie Kirk, but there were also some people who were very vocal about not supporting what his life represented.
Great. Jim.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I guess, maybe more Liz than Patrick, but since you're online all the time and so forth, and you're creating, what are the main sort of issues that are kind of on the front burner right now that you feel like are important for people to know in Iowa?
There have been a few very hot topics that have taken place in Iowa lately. If you ask anybody what their main concerns are leading into 2026, they're going to tell you water quality. They're going to tell you our public schools, which Iowa once boasted like some of the top public schools in the nation. They've really gone downhill. Single party control is also coming into the conversation, where people are kind of tying the issues that we're facing back to the fact that, well, the Republicans have the state House, Senate, and the governor's mansion. Other conversations that come up, farming. Iowa is, to no surprise here, a huge farming state. And the conversations around the tariffs are really starting to pick up, and people are starting to put together that the farmers are upset, and what does that mean? Why are they upset? And they're tying it back to policy. A lot of the national issues, the culture war topics, they come up. They come up in the legislature, and people are realizing that our representatives who are focusing on attacking transgender people or non-binary people is really not making their quality of life better. So I'm not sure if I missed any there, Pat, but please let me know if I did. A lot of the conversations are getting really local, and people are curious about people like Rob Sand coming who is very popular statewide, but is on the party that hasn't been in the party that hasn't been in power. So there's a curiosity there about if it's a viable thing for independents to get behind this Rob Sand character.
There's
Great.
there's also been a lot of factory layoffs in Iowa this year, a real big uptick, especially at John Deere and places like that. That I think is something we'll want to talk about.
Good to know. All right, it is almost 5:15, which is the time for our hard close. But can we all just give one more hand to our guest speakers?
Thank you so much. It was wonderfonderful.
Thank you.
Hey,
Really
thank you
learned a
all. This
lot.
was great.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having us. This was wonderful.